All right. Whoa, yeah.
I cannot publish in writing or by speaking in public by word of mouth, directly or indirectly, in his name, in my name, or in any other name, corporate or personal, anything on the subject of the Holocaust, or any subject directly or indirectly related to it. So that means that it's going to be a very unusual interview. If you find my mouth dripping blood, it is because I'm biting my tongue left and right. You know? So that's the judge's order.
Does that just go for you, or
No, it goes for everybody.
everybody? Is that right?
Yeah. See, corporate or in his name or in any other name, corporate or personal. I see. So that is really the problem. No, I'll know a way around for you, of course. It's very easy. All you have to do is, we can talk about freedom of speech. We can talk about Section 177 of the Criminal Code, which led to the prosecution. On the Holocaust, all you have to do is go to the library, or maybe you have kept some clippings, you know, and you can fill that in. Kirk Macon in the Globe and Mail, or David Kendall from the Toronto Sun.
And all that.
Right, you see? So, I mean, I cannot, and I wouldn't do it for you anyways, because I'm not going to talk myself into a 15-month jail term.
Yeah, we understand.
Okay?
We were wondering, were you collecting news clippings too?
Sure.
So could we copy some of those? Because I obviously didn't get them all. My little
Well,
brother and sister burned some.
if I were to give you all my news clippings from Australia, South Africa, America, and
Canada,
New York
Canada.
Times, and everywhere, you will be owing me $150, and there'll be a copy team here for the next 3 days. So we have to narrow down what exactly you want, and then we'll go from there.
Mostly all
Well,
Canadian.
Mostly all Canadian? But you're interested only in this is the backwater of the world here, you know. So
well, the
go for
people
the
here,
big time stories like the
people
New
here
York
just want to hear
Times.
about Canada, though.
Oh, I
They don't
see.
really care about.
That's
That's basically the way it is here.
That's one of the problems with Canadians. Right? That's why there's a bloody provincial, right? Okay, good. We'll go up front, and we have a little more space there. Than in
I was
this
going to
little-
ask about filming. What exactly can we film? Can we get a shot of your office and everything?
It just depends on.
That one looks good.
No, it just depends on.
Looks good enough for national news.
You know.
They had all this here in?
Oh.
So we can take it in too?
Sure, I guess.
With all the papers and all that?
But that's what it looked like to them, so.
Oh, that's
Okay. You got the old trusty zone here.
So they'll be surprised. They think of it as something that's completely organized and all that.
No,
They imagine Germans will organize
it
everything
is
neat and
organized.
clean. Yeah, I
It
know
just
what you
doesn't
mean.
look that way.
You see?
I know.
Organized confusion.
You used to straighten out the mess in my desk or you move up my system.
Yes, thermals make it plug it in, Ken.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll find your place up front here, sir. Good, okay, come on up.
No, everything's plugged.
It's okay, come on.
We have that big thing out there.
What about the book about Anne Frank there? Now, I've heard stories about how, like, why it's wrong, but what is the actual thing? Is it because that's right. And it was in the 50s when they invented the ballpoint pen.
We brought all this stuff.
So Anne Frank either invented the ballpoint pen or she's lying, right?
Well,
Or she's
not
still
Frank.
alive.
Most likely,
Whoever wrote it.
most likely she was just a victim.
Her father probably wrote it. Otto Frank.
Well, you see, you have to look at it this way. All of these historic events, you have to look in the context of it. Think of 1945 Europe. It's nothing but a bunch of smoking ruins. The Germans are down. Black troops, Indian troops from all over the place can boot Germans in the ass, rape their women, abduct their girls, keep them for white slave rings, and all this kind of shit. You know? Nobody ever, and the Germans couldn't do that thing. They had no police power, they had no guns to defend themselves. They were totally without any rights, disenfranchised and everything else. So, you could say in Europe anything about the Germans with impunity. That's what they thought. Who thought that Ernst Zündel would arrive 40 years later in Toronto, Canada, with all kinds of friends supporting him, and the gift of the gab and the organization was willing to put a trial together like this? Nobody thought that. Same with Otto Frank. Otto Frank never thought that his idea was ever going to be challenged. Well, whoever thought that there were going to be German police, of all things, going to Switzerland, taking actual pages of the diary and submitting them to forensic studies? 1945? Are you kidding? The Germans were a piece of shit.
Well, they figured that they were down for it.
I think every person that has ever gone through high school and university knows that there are these textbooks could be at least 1/5 as thick as they are, or 1/3 as thick as they are. The rest is just filling to make the the book more expensive, and to basically drive students crazy with bullshit. You know? That's what it is. So when you cut down Hilberg's thick tome and you get to the essence of it, it is just propaganda. You know? And you see, this is where the freedom of speech thing comes in. Now that they have deprived me of my freedom of speech, they have given free rein to one side of a controversy, like muzzled me on the other side. Now, I was the only voice with enough guts and maybe stupidity. Well, Keegstra in a much less limited sense.
He hardly did anything, really.
Keegstra was teaching his high school students out in the sticks in Alberta. Keegstra is a creature of the media. You know, if the media hadn't picked him up or the Jews hadn't made him famous, Keegstra would be teaching, what, 15 kids out in Red Deer, Alberta, or in Aikville. Hell, there's 890 people living in Aikville. What kind of a conspiracy could he hatch? He has been teaching for 14 years. I've heard no pogroms in Calgary, in Edmonton, or any place else. Right?
Isn't it that most students support him anyways?
But what I mean is, it is patently ridiculous, and it shows that there is some power much bigger than the little town of Aikville that is blowing this thing out of all proportions. The students liked him. I went out to interview some of the students. I went out to interview Keegstra himself. He is like many of these fundamentalist, Bible-punching types. You know, he's absolutely convinced that some people are the devil's tool and others are not. You know? Now, maybe he did abuse his privilege as a teacher in teaching so much of what he felt in. But Christ, my kid, going through a Catholic school here in Toronto, the shit that he was taught by his teacher and the one-sidedness about the Holocaust, I'm just as upset as the parents are about Keegstra teaching that. Except nobody, and I complained to the school board and complained to the school administrator, complained to the teacher, wrote to the press. Do you think I got anywhere? Of course not, because some people are more equal than others. See, that's what we're looking at. Now, this is going to be a very dangerous interview for me. If I'm going to tell you that I cannot answer it, it is not that I wouldn't deal it up to let it all hang out. You understand this, eh?
Yeah, I know.
Now, if you want subsequent information, and I think maybe that's a very good idea. In one way, I'm quite glad that I lost the trial. You know, if I had won the trial, the rest of Canada would have gone back to sleep and said freedom of speech is safe. You know, even crackpots like Zündel can tell these lies, right? In effect, the trial settled very little, because those who believed in the Holocaust, lock, stock, and barrel, they have been reaffirmed in their belief. Those who don't like it, they have had enough from my witnesses to be confirmed in their idea that there is something not all kosher about it, you know. The great sleeping mass of apathetic Canadians, they had entertainment for 9 weeks, you know. They didn't give a shit either way, pro-Holocaust or anti-Holocaust. But what it did is that it means that people can no longer just waltz in here, get the facts laid out to them, and then go on home and say, gee, this fascinating, that's interesting, that's stupid, blah, blah, blah. Now they have to do it for themselves. See, you're going to have to do much more research, more painful to you, and more time-consuming, but in a way it's going to be a better education than if I were to condense it all for you and lay it all out. You see? So in a way it was a positive thing. Also, many people in Canada now know that we do have political trials. See? Because that's what this was. It was a political trial. They very little. When I came up on the stand, concentrated on the booklet, they were interested in my political opinions. They went back 9 years to a letter which I wrote to West Germany, which somebody supplied to them, and they spread this all out, you know. So it was a political trial, in the true sense of political show trials. So in one way it was educational to many Canadians who thought that in Canada we couldn't have that. This was a free society, and that it couldn't happen here, that somebody that questioned an idea could go to jail for 15 months or lose his freedom to speak. Look at, imagine that, eh? Anything on the subject of the Holocaust or any subject directly or indirectly related to it. Now, but let me see here. The speed limit imposed by Adolf Hitler on the Autobahns in 1938 related to the Nazis. The Nazis are related to the Holocaust because they allegedly formulated the policy. Therefore, we can't talk about road safety in Germany. That's right. You know what I mean? That's what a gag order means. That's what political justice means. You see? That's the first time in North American history that this has taken place. It virtually was born. Is that news to you? No, that's history to us, right? So I wasn't charged under false history. I was charged under spreading false news.
One thing about the law, it states that they have to prove that you did not believe, or
Right.
actually believe what you're saying. Now, how can they prove that? I mean, you can't read a person's mind, so how can they actually prove that you didn't really believe it, or don't believe it, I should say, sorry.
This is very easy, the way this happened over in that courthouse. When the judge did not allow me, my attorney, to pose any questions to the potential jurors, like they allowed in the Morgenthaler case. A man who has been freely stating that he has performed 18,000 abortions. So, that man clearly broke the law 18,000 times. So, see, he was allowed to ask potential jurors, do you go to church regularly? You know? That's
I
right.
thought you were not supposed to do it.
I was not, but he was.
Oh, I didn't
He
know
was,
that.
oh yeah, he was allowed to ask 3 or 4 very pointed questions, you see, and was allowed to get psychologists in to take a look at the jurors. So, the judge in my case said that Zündel cannot get a tailor-made jury. Well, I ask you, if Morgenthaler asked questions about a person's family life, do they believe in a strong family? Because if they did, the second logic following thing is that they are for family, not for abortion, so they would dump those jurors. No? In my case, I couldn't even, I didn't hear their voice. You know? I had no idea. For all I know, with the way the judge ruled, and the second day of the trial already, after he had seen all this massive publicity that was going on, which meant that we showed them videotapes, let them listen to audio tapes. I read from news clippings, which we all introduced into evidence, to point out that there is nobody within the realm of Toronto, really, that had not heard of Ernst Zündel and his alleged beliefs. You know? So, that any juror coming from this city knew about me, had formed an opinion about me. Usually it was negative, because the media reported falsely and negatively about me. So we wanted to ferret out the jurors, which is a very logical process. And in the United States, it is enshrined in law that you must do that in order to get a trial by the jury of your peers. For all I know, my peers were 12 people who were possible Holocaust victims. I couldn't ask them.
So how is it possible to get a person with a neutral point of view if everybody is brought up to believe in the Holocaust the way they write it?
Well, exactly. I was going to fly in Indians from Inuvik.
I was going to say,
You know,
like
in
in
order-
the Chinese people, that'd be something.
That's right.
I mean, Chinese people would very much probably support you even.
Yeah.
I mean, they probably hate Americans more than they do Germans anytime.
Well, this is no, but as you said, I was willing to take my chance, and I was forced to anyways. In a society that had a certain frame of mind and access to really only one side of this controversy that I was being tried on. No? So, already I was laboring under a disadvantage by being tried in the system, okay? Not by a third world country, which I have always advocated, that this controversy ought to be set or investigated by United Nations Commission made up of neutrals or countries which were not involved in the Second World War. Because all the others, by God, you know, their viewpoint is going to be colored because they were either with the Germans or against the Germans or whatever way. So I had hoped to get a jury that was somewhat neutral. I wanted to get young people on the jury. You see, but there's another thing, I don't know if you knew this, that the prosecutor can set aside any number of people. There were 400 people as potential jurors in that room. That man set aside over 40 people which I had chosen, and they were all young people, because I have far more faith in young people than in older people whose minds have been subjected to many more inputs than young people. And also young kids, I find, are less bigoted than old people. You know, old people are so settled in their ways. They have a snail house that is made out of concrete as compared to a fragile shell that a young person brings into the trial. So I had wanted to have 19, 20, 21, 22, 23-year-old young people. And every one of the young people he set aside for me. So what I ended up with, I was running out of how many people I could oppose, you see. I ended up with middle-aged, pensioners, people which I really did not want. But that's the way a jury system works. Now, many people have said to me before the trial and since the trial, I should have chosen the judge, because the issues raised were so complex that no 12 ordinary goofs could understand it. You know, I made a conscious decision for a jury knowing full well the handicap that I was going to labor under, because I thought that if one man could be extremely prejudiced, and I can't question the judge if he's prejudiced, and I have to trust him that he's going to remove himself if he feels strongly about the case. And man, I was so right.
And he didn't even try to more or less cover that, because in the end, like calling you neo-Nazi and all that. And
on the
whatever.
second day, I knew that my goose was cooked.
Wait,
And
did you tell the jury that we can't argue about the Holocaust? It's true.
Virtually, he said to him,
Wasn't it something that he said that too late? Like, did he instruct the jury too late or something like
well,
that?
yeah, no, see, here's what happens is, in the trial, is it running? Not running?
Not yet.
Not yet. Oh,
You
shit.
guys were running.
Okay, I thought you were running.
No, we wait for something.
Okay, who's the director here?
How are we gonna do this? Like,
I don't
just
know.
asking questions.
Because we're waiting for the
You asked
format.
them.
How many ideas? Are you gonna leave your jacket on to interview? Or?
Sure. You can take it off, whatever you want. I've got my jacket on. We're all letting it all hang out. Hang loose.
Smell anything, I guess.
So we're just waiting for the word to start.
Yeah, but anyway, just to round this finally up. Yeah, towards the end of the.
Why don't you keep one like on one side?
Yeah, okay.
Can
Can
you do that? You want
Are
to
you
speak
getting
in my
all
fat bod?
in frame
I
there?
can try.
Going to be able to get all three in?
I can just back up the.
Oh,
Maybe they can
I'll
get
stay over here. You guys can stand over. I'm gonna lead on my prerogatives of the boss. And that ugly box should be put over there. Just
Picking up lots.
yeah. Don't hide it too far, otherwise we'll never find
Oh,
it.
it's right there.
Okay. Good. Okay, you're gonna make a formal introduction. Are you gonna be too warm with that?
We're tying.
You guys are so formal, maybe I should put on a tie myself, eh? I even went to the barber this morning, but the tie was so tight that for my 25 hairs, you know, decided.
Can you walk out in the street like or
Yeah, these days I'm sick and tired of wearing my bulletproof vest, so depending on where I go, when I go, or how it looks outside.
Most disturbing thing is the noise. Hello, Mr. Zündel. Hi, Ernst. Hey, keep at it.
In dime jail, that was something else. I never was so popular outside of jail as I was inside jail. You know? It was really something.
So in the jail, they didn't mind? Like,
No, look, this is an animal farm, I tell you that. And I've never been in Canada in a place that was so filthy. I couldn't believe it. There were dirty socks all over the place, dirty underwear, and Polaroid peel-offs from the mugshot department. The garbage cans were overflowing. There were guys sprawled out flat on the ground, dopies, you know, and alcoholics in the cell where they were supposed to take showers after they had their prison garb and all that. I couldn't believe it. I was not prepared for that. I thought to myself, is this Toronto just down the block from me? I couldn't believe that. But outside of that, I can serve my 15 months to be sure for that. And if that's the worst, apparently they had taken me to the, because they were afraid that somebody might kill me, to the isolation wing, ultimately. At the first evening I spent with a fellow from India, had a very interesting conversation, and then they thought, because he was colored, that he might kill me. So they removed him and put in some white dope addict, who was, believe me, I would have 10 times preferred the Indian over this animal that they put into my cell, you know. And so, maybe that's it. Yeah. And so the next day they put me in isolation cell. But it's not pretty. And I basically steeled myself for many years for this, because I realized that anybody that had unusual ideas and was willing to kind of fly against the prevailing wind, you know, was going to be kind of blown over possibly sooner or later. So mentally I prepared myself for the ordeal, and I know enough about political figures and political activists that sooner or later the powers that be, when they run out of ideas to deal with you legally, that then they go after you through jail. And as my attorney said in his summation before conviction, that the jails are notoriously poor containers of ideas because they leak all over, and that's the truth. You see, if they think by putting me into jail that that's going to change anything, on the contrary, it has made already my conviction, even though I'm out on bail, it has made me into, if you look at the letters to the editors, and you look at the editorials and some of the columnists like Eric Margolis, Barbara Amiel, and
she's actually.
And Eric
for it
Margolis
because
was good.
there should be freedom of speech.
She's for freedom of speech.
see, so
And now that the trial's over.
yeah, not that the problem. So when you see what the problem with these guys is they know that now that Section 177 has been used once, it can be used again, and they know that coming down the tube, there's going to be other immigrants that are going to use Section 177 against the liars in the media. That's what this is all about. The big media basically doesn't write about freedom of speech under Section 177 because of the love of Ernst Zündel and his ideas. They do it because they are afraid. That's right. And somebody will, I guarantee it.
Didn't they say, like, they charge under Section 177, but wasn't it they charged under, I forget what number it was, 282 or something?
281 and
281.
281.2.
How would that be different?
Very different. I was very glad that if I had to be charged, that I was charged under Section 177, because there is something subliminally nasty to be constantly referred to in the media as being a hate monger. You know, a guy that is hateful. Well, in my case, I have supposedly spread false news. How many people are spreading false news? Santa Claus, is there a Santa Claus? Well, that's false news. The Easter Bunny, that's false news, right? The weatherman said it was going to be 95 today. Well, it happens to be 65. Is that false news? Of course, it's false news. You know, so it's far less of a social stigma to be charged under Section 177 than it is to be charged under Section 281.1 and 281.2.
I have something like that in the German career. In Deutsche Kurier, they wrote one of the readers that when also Leute fest an Weihnachtsmann, Osterhase und Holocaust glauben, nicht nachdenken.
That's right. Yeah. See, so that's the reason why I prefer this charge. Also, you see, it gave me an opportunity to do what I did. I brought 21 witnesses of my side to oppose 13 or 12 government witnesses. Now, the reason why the big media and some of the big science organizations are upset about the trial of Ernst Zündel is because so much material was brought before the public. Every morning on the breakfast table from Halifax to Vancouver, there was some screaming headline of my experts or of my attorney examining their experts and talking about details of the Holocaust, which I'm not allowed to talk about, you know. And so this is what Section 177 gave me, and I have to tell you, I made the most of it, because I knew that if I had to be put through the ordeal and the cost of going to court every day facing these people and having my name bandied about, I was going to exact the price. And many of the media people said that I was manipulating the trial. Well, shit. Of course, if I am in a situation where I have to defend myself, naturally I'm going to put up the best defense there is possible. Now, if that is manipulation, so maybe these guys, it takes one to know one. The media manipulated the news for so long that they saw what was coming down the tube. It looked very good on it. This case has such ramifications. I don't know if you are familiar or heard under you did during your high school studies in history about Dreyfus in France, the Dreyfus case. Now that Dreyfus case is still spooking around in French history, and even today it's like a feather bed. Because it's still not settled. The Zündel case has every look of becoming quite a similar case. There's one Jewish writer from the United States in Houston. He said that maybe what we should do is make the name Zündel synonymous with lying about history. So if somebody lies about a historic event, we should call it that he is Zündel. He's a Zündelist, or he's a Zündeling. It's like whistling. We should put the word Zündeling into the dictionary to be synonymous with that. No, I think that there are a lot of people shouting from the rooftops and dancing horrors in the streets in Forest Hill far too early, because there's all kinds of appeal procedures. We have already lost a 29-point appeal against the verdict, and we have lost a very strong appeal against the sentence, and there's every reason to believe that in 118 years, there were only 3 cases tried under Section 177. There was 1 conviction. No, not to jail, but for a small fine. Suddenly, I, a man who has never been convicted of anything, get 15 months in jail, where there is no record and no history under this section of the Criminal Code, a section which Pierre Trudeau wanted to take out of the Criminal Code in 1965 and 66.
And this sentence is the same as that which has been imposed upon an attempted murder.
So I think that you will see, if there is some semblance of justice, that Ernst will look much different a year down the road from what I look right this moment. And I don't think I'm smart enough to know that political realities being what they are, I don't think that the sentence will be overturned. But I think that from a 15-month jail term, there's going to be quite a reduction.
So section 177, that law is basically unconstitutional then. Right?
Well, we thought it was, and that's why we made a motion right from the beginning. It was the very first motion we made.
So what about 281? What would the difference have been? Like,
Well, because section 281 is number one, more specifically written, and it is far tighter. It has not got this thing that I knowingly published false news. You see?
You feel like people like Barb and Neil feel that there really is no freedom of speech in Canada. If this would have taken place in the United States, would anything have gone differently, you think?
Would have never come.
never come out. That's where you're getting all this information.
And you see, it is my hope that with young people like yourselves and civil libertarians, and my case as an example, that this Canadian Charter of Rights can be given some life. Because if every time a real issue of freedom of speech comes up, it's immediately swept aside, and it won't take long before the public realizes that the politicians have conned us into yet another piece of paper which is not worth the ink that was printed on it, you know? Unless these august documents gain some life and meaning by actual application, then by God, they're useless. You know, and it's not a bad idea to find out early. All of us, you know, that it's a piece of shit. It's not really a document that is worthy to refer to as a document. You see, it's very easy to talk about freedom of speech if you agree with the fellow. Oh, it's the easiest thing in the world. Wonderful, what a nice guy. Boy, that guy's really holding it forth from the podium, you know. But the test comes when you guarantee some guy's freedom of speech with whom you totally disagree. You know, that's the test. And Canada, with all its hypocritical grandstanding, in my case, has failed miserably. Every civil libertarian, after the fact, they now come out and spill a few crocodile tears about it shouldn't have happened. But in the meantime, they were silent when freedom of speech was in danger, except one man, a British prisoner of war, who was not only in Belsen, during the liberated Belsen, but who was in a German concentration camp in Lambsdorff as a prisoner of war in Silesia, and broke out from there. And that man stuck his neck out, an Englishman, to come to Toronto as the only member of the media to say, in my columns I say far more hateful things than Ernst is saying in his book. So you see, the freedom of speech issue is the dominant one. You can agree or disagree about the 40-year-old issue of whether or not something like the Holocaust took place. Since I'm not allowed to talk about it anyways.
Could you go over, excuse me, could you just go over for the camera exactly what you can't say?
Yeah. Judge Locke said that I cannot publish in writing. That also includes broadcasting, because I do a lot of radio talk shows, you know. Or by speaking in public, by word of mouth, meaning between just you and I, you know, or some whiner down the street, directly or indirectly, in his name, meaning I cannot ask somebody else to do something for me, because that would make me a criminal and you make you an accomplice, accessory to a fact, you know. In his name or in any other name, corporate or personal, meaning I cannot hire a printer to print something for me and to give it on and say, distribute it, you see? Now, anything on the subject of the Holocaust, and here comes the clincher, or any subject directly or indirectly related to it. Now this is why the Globe and Mail made such a...
Jerome Brentar's on the phone. Shall I give him a call back?
Yeah, ask him to call back.
Okay.
That basically means that I am muzzled from discussing anything having to do with history, with modern history. Because really, history is an organic stream.
It can always be related to something to do with Germany.
Right. So this is no. So then I appealed this. This is Judge Locke's decision, right? And so Tarnopolsky, the man who was in charge of formulating the Ontario Human Rights Code, whom you would expect to be more liberal, since he's all into human rights. He's the father of human rights in Ontario. He says that the generality of this condition, that I should be of good behavior and without limiting the generality of this condition. In particular, he, meaning me, not publish, directly or indirectly, by writing or by speaking in public, anything in support or furtherance of the views and assertions of facts expressed in publication which was the subject of his conviction. Now, you see, if I go against these very strict conditions, either in this or in this, it would mean that I will serve my full 15 months immediately. And after the 15 months, they have added on the 3 years probation, where I still cannot talk about it, even though after I come out of jail, I served my 15 months.
But they can't.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I will fight the deportation order with the same spirit that I fought in my 9-week trial. And there's going to be lots of feathers flying. And if those fools want to do that to me and to themselves, they're welcome to it. My bayonets are fixed. If they want to impale themselves on it, good. I'm waiting for it. The New York Times wrote an article halfway through the trial saying, big article on page 2, that it was a big mistake what Ontario did with the trial.
But the New York Times, are they not? Is that not usual? I'm just wondering.
Sure, but I mean, you see, they recognize, most intelligent Jews recognize that the trial of Ernst Zündel was a mistake. So they already recognized it halfway through the trial. Some of the biggest names, like Eddie Greenspan, for instance, a big top-notch criminal lawyer, he says, and he even said before, Zündel shouldn't have been tried. But you see, the moment when these political trials get set in motion, reason ceases. Political passion takes over, and there is nothing to get the adrenaline flowing like political animosity. We all know that. That's why civil wars are the most terrible wars. Far more passionate and cruel than a regular war. Because there you have two sides that have a specific viewpoint which they will fight to unto death. And it's the same with this. The pamphlet has been out since 1972.
But see, nobody ever heard of it because there was no big fuss over it. See,
I have distributed that pamphlet to every Attorney General in Canada, to every Member of Parliament in Canada, to every Catholic priest in Quebec, to every Protestant minister, to every high school history teacher in Ontario.
every high school.
Every high school teacher.
Every single one in Ontario.
Every single
So
one.
every teacher in our school should have had
High
one
school
of these.
history teacher.
Yeah, high school.
Yeah.
Because Mr. Higgins, I've talked to him about this. This is a history teacher of mine.
You see, it depends who intercepts the mail at the front office.
Oh, okay. There we
You see,
go.
that's the problem. I mean, I've had stuff of mine torn up, sent back to me,
Of course.
and stuff like this.
When did you start distributing the pamphlets? About what year?
As a direct reaction to the Holocaust, the movie The Holocaust. It's all my work has been basically a defensive effort. You see, look, I was part of a CBC program called the Kowalski Report, in which the CBC sent out camera teams to Canadian, meaning here in Ontario, Girl Guide places, Boy Scouts, even kindergartens and regular schools, and they asked each one of these kids, what's the difference between the Nazi and the German? And not a single kid interviewed could make a difference. Which means it is bullshit to talk by media moguls, about there's a difference between Nazis and Germans. In the public mind, the Nazis were Germans and the Germans were Nazis. So every time on television, a nasty deed is being performed by a Nazi, the public, having been conditioned for so long, sees Germans in it, and that is the evil that I have been fighting against all this time. And in my immigration hearing, that's exactly what I'm going to lay square on the doorstep of Canadians. There are so many movies and stereotypes made in Hollywood that a little effort like mine, with all the dedication and idealism, was like a drop in the bucket. And I felt duty-bound to do what I have done. I still feel duty-bound to do what I can no longer publicly say, but at least as long as I am walking on my hind legs and I'm here, I'm denying those liars a victory.
Yeah.
You see this, although this is maybe lost on many people, but it is symbolic. As long as one man says, till here and no further, it means they have no total victory. And that's very important for a group of people that only understand total subservience. I have never met a group of people, which I may not mention at this time, that so desperately demands to be loved and appreciated and admired, that have no faults, that are perfect, that throughout history were always the victims. I cannot believe that they have the nerve even to portray themselves like that, you know? When every person on the face of the earth knows that when you go to the bathroom in the John, we all stink. That these guys, they should eau de cologne. That's basically what it amounts to, you know? And I, frankly, think that sooner or later, my own kinsmen, you, Dutch, wherever you are, I wake up and know that Ernst Zündel was right.
See,
And that was not some relic from yesterday, but I'm very relevant.
see,
But
many-
anyway,
Going back to the trial,
Yeah.
how much of a bail are you on? How much does that cost?
10,000,
10,000.
just for the bill,
And how long do you expect to wait for the appeal?
at least a year.
At least a year.
Some papers write $1,000. That's
Yeah, that was from the moment the verdict was in order that I shut up for the 3 weeks till I was sentenced, I had to put up $1,000
And
cash.
then another 10,000.
Yeah.
So it's actually 11,000.
11,500, because then the 10,000 is a property bond, and I had to find somebody. They wouldn't take my money. Somebody else was going to vouch for me, and so this German lady, she put the 10,000 up for me. But I had to put up $500. Now the 1,000, which I kept my mouth shut for the 3 weeks till I was sentenced, I'm going to get that back, hopefully.
Just for the camera, can you tell us again why you feel you've actually won something by losing the trial this time around?
Yeah, well, basically, if I had won my case, would it be nice for me because I could strut my stuff, walk down the street, and look like a winner. But that would be one individual having won something. You know? Those who don't believe me when I say that I have the truth wouldn't have been convinced. Very few people shifted sides during the trial on the issue of the trial, you know. But by losing, I become a symbol that not all is well in Canada, that the Canadian Charter of Rights has no life, has no meaning, because the judge could not allow it to be invoked, which was our first constitutional argument, that under the freedom of speech guaranteed by the Charter of Rights, I should be allowed to question and to discuss these topics. So, by losing, many thousands, hopefully millions of Canadians are going to be so shaken up that a man in Canada that doesn't believe in a historic event that took place 40 years ago can be going to jail for 15 months. That will so jar their conscience. And I have, by letters which I have gotten, phone calls which I have gotten, copies of letters by people sent to MPs, to the Judicial Council and so on, I know that by losing, I have done a greater service and had a greater impact, and will have for much longer time. Because if I had won the case, nothing is older than yesterday's news. They would have completely ignored me, you know, and I would have been charged within a few months under a different section of the criminal code. You can be sure. This way, it is perfect. My detractors and my enemies had their victory. You all read in the newspapers how they gloated about this lie monger going to jail for 15 months, and that justice has been done and all this kind of stuff. Now, there's going to be an appeal. When the appeal comes in, I am quite sure that I'm not going to only reduce the sentence from 15 months to considerably less time, but also I'm going to reduce my 3 years probation down to considerably less time. I'm absolutely sure, because the way the precedents are in this case are such that what I have been is victimized by political hysteria, mass hysteria. You know? So I won that point for Canada, but at the same time, the biggest win for me that far goes beyond the 15 months is the information which was made public by my expert witnesses and the cross-examination of the Crown's witnesses during the trial. That amounts not to $1 million. The media says that I said $1 million. Many, many millions of dollars worth of stamp money. You know, when I send out a newsletter, I have to pay 32 cents for my stamps. Many people don't read it, throw it in the garbage, I know that. You know? With that, every morning, the Globe and Mail is the paper of record in Canada. Every member of Parliament, the Prime Minister, virtually every government leader and businessman across the country, with his croissant and his toast doré, was served Ernst Zündel's headlines on the Holocaust. So, informationally, I won the case. Judicially, I lost the first round. That's how I like to look at it. And I have become somewhat of a martyr.
Okay, through the whole thing, it says that you were, like, they wrote in the papers, you were more or less trying to provoke them with the pamphlet. Is that true? Like, were you trying to get them to sue you? Or were you really trying to also convince people that the Holocaust did not happen as it is written in our history books? And that not as many people did die? Were you looking...
Well, look at it this way. There's such agitation going on in society about hate literature, you know, that the initial reason why I published the thing with a question mark on it and with an introduction to it was basically to say, is this hate literature? You be the judge.
You were stating it, so...
Yes, I did. I said, is this hate literature? In my introduction to it. You don't have the complete booklet. You have someone else's booklet.
It's on reading.
Yeah, you see, that's not our booklet. Our booklet had a 3-page introduction afterward on it, where I clearly said to all the lawyers and media representatives and government representatives in Canada, is this hate? I sent you the booklet, have a look at it, you tell me if it's hate.
So in other words, you really didn't state the fact.
I said nobody needs to believe it. I was questioning it, which makes my conviction more obscene. Mine was a classic case of a citizen taking civic action on an issue in a civilized manner, totally legitimate, totally within the framework of a democratic society, and what ended up 5 years after the damn, 7 years after the damn booklet was published in the first place, was a kind of a kangaroo court where I was dragged before the 12 jurors and the judge, basically ended up being massacred. You know, that's basically it. And it's no different from Stalin's show trials. No different whatsoever. No different whatsoever. Because the appeal process will bring out the fact that there were at least 29 flagrant offenses against standard Canadian procedure. And 29 is very few cases where there's 29 points for appeal. There's usually 2 or 3 errors in law or something like that, but not ever that amount. And that's without reading the 4,680 pages of the transcript.
How much did you say that it was to get the transcript itself?
$13,330. It'll be more because the judge's verdict, Griffith's address to the sentencing, my own attorney's address to the sentencing, each page costs $2.85.
And in order to appeal, you have to have it.
I have to have it. If I don't have a receipt from the court on a special form with a rubber stamp on it saying that I have paid, and in this case they wanted $4,000 down, I cannot even be granted an appeal. So, what does that mean for some poor writer or pamphleteer that doesn't have that money after he has gone through an 8 or 9 week trial, where I had to pay for all my witnesses to fly in from all over Europe? Tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars. No?
I don't know. Sorry.
Are you getting help financially? Like,
So I'm asking.
There's lots of small people from all walks of life. One Chinese fellow just sent me $40. And one Jewish girl in Toronto gave me 2 donations. So she's convinced that I'm right and that the wrong has been done here. And of course, German people, Ukrainians, Poles.
have you had any demonstrations really since the trial?
No.
No? So I see.
No, because you see, this is another beneficial spin-off of the trial, that I have bought myself survival. By losing, my enemies didn't find it necessary to continue with their bombing campaign, for instance. They bombed my place.
Was that right here?
Sure. Back of the house, you see? No.
Other than that, have there been any other attempts on your life?
Just threats, bomb threats, death threats, demonstration of 1,500 or 2,000 Zionists outside our house here one day, blockading the whole street. And
Trying to break through the police lines.
yeah, people shadowing me, or if I'm not around with 2 or 3 fellows when I go out, usually you can be pounced on, stuff like that. No. I think that's disgusting, but I'm not surprised, knowing the personality profile of the people that I'm dealing with. They're born terrorists. See? So why should they behave towards Ernst Zündel in Toronto, Canada, any different than they behave to the people in Sabra and Shatila?
But I was going to ask, I don't know if you mentioned this question, is actually any other country or government supporting you? Like I would
No.
think
None whatsoever.
no Arab countries or anything like that.
Absolutely none whatsoever. You know, and it's understandable. I think it's disgusting, but it's understandable. If we here in Toronto, where people can walk into my house and talk to me like you did, coming all the way down from Barrie, now we have been talking, what, for an hour? if you can talk to me like that, and many go away from here unconvinced, they're still thinking I'm some weirdo and crackpot. Well, what is some guy over in Kuwait or Outer Slovenia going to think that gets a couple of newsletters and things written, not even oftentimes in his own native language? I'm not going to be able to convince him. If I cannot convince Canadians in 27 years of my work that I'm not a nutcase and that I'm not a criminal, then what impact am I going to expect from the Arab world? These guys haven't got our cultural background, you know. They're basically a bunch of kashba salesmen and bazaar and tent keepers and camel drivers that have recently migrated to the cities. Am I going to expect great gems of wisdom from them? Of course not.
No, but I mean, for them it would be beneficial if you would be able to prove that the Holocaust is exaggerated, and it would be changed, and automatically they would also, like Barrie would say, hey, you know, we paid a lot of money, and I think we paid enough by now. And if that would stop, then the whole Israeli government would pretty well seize up, and that would be beneficial for the Arabs. So I'm surprised that they wouldn't offer you support anyway else.
Well, let me put it this way. West German government has taken you out of date here.
No, it died.
It died. How come?
The battery.
But are you not unplugged in here?
No, we didn't bring a
You didn't bring your cord?
we weren't expecting an interview.
Well, that's okay. There's no problem. We've got enough out of it anyway. So just ended up with
Here you are.
the German thing.
I got about another 10 minutes of battery power in there if you want to carry on with that.
Oh, there's.
Maybe a merciful God prevented that question. No, so the West German government has taken my passport away. See, and the reason why they took it away is that I, with my work against this lie, damaged the vital interests of the German state, which is to do penance. If a country that can read my books, my newsletters which go out there, listen to my tapes and my videotapes, if there are still officials and judges and prosecutors that are such prostitutes that they will do this in order that I cannot travel to the place that might give me some support. If you nail me down here in Canada, then am I going to blame some poor Arab? Ridiculous. Of course not.
See, you're
This
looking
is
at
a very complex issue.
realities.
In civilized society, there is such an infrastructure of authority, power, pension plans, health insurance schemes, seniorities at universities, seniorities at jobs. Christ, who is going to rattle the boat? You know? This is the tragedy of these modern civilized states. That's why there is no movement. West Germany, East Germany, Austria, we present to the world the absolute paragons of virtue and stability. And we have the tranquility of every well-kept graveyard. The lawns are mowed, the church bells are silent, the warning signs are up, drive slowly during the daylight hours in the graveyard. That's Germany. Germany, as far as political opinions is concerned, in the East and in the West, is as silent and as petrified and calcified as it was in 1948, 49, 1950, because every person that is anything in that state has by now gained such an interest in the existing order of things that really only a war or a violent revolution can change anything on it. You know? So, why do I bother? Knowing this, why do I send out my few thousand newsletters to West Germany? It's basically, again, because I think once you have found the truth and you have expanded your mind to a certain level of understanding and knowledge, it is your duty, if you are an incorruptible human being and an honest person, to say what needs to be said. You owe it to yourself. I could not go and shave in the morning looking in the mirror if I didn't do what I'm doing. In spite of the cost, regardless of the traumatization, jail terms and all that shit.
And yet, they say you don't believe. They say you're lying. That's what they're saying.
You see, that slops off me like water. Slops off a duck. I know that I passionately believe in what I say. And that's the nice thing about Ernst Zündel, and always has been, hopefully always will be, that I mean what I say, and I say what I mean. And if I cannot impart anything else on the world but a certain respect, that in spite of all these powerful forces that oppose me on it, that there is one guy that has the courage to say what he believes. Now, man, that's so rare today, where everybody is beholden to the brown nosing, basically. That's what you call it in high school.
Waffling for
To the
votes.
teachers and the professors to get good marks. I pity everybody that is being lied to in our educational institutions today, because everybody that, all of you know the likes and the dislikes of every one of your teachers, and you would be idiots if you did not write in your assignments or in your things, slanting it towards it. And that's the first sign already of slavery. That's how the system conditions every young person to pervert and to corrupt and to prostitute himself, you know? No. Look, I went to the same bloody school system and the same University of Montreal system. If you wanted to have a certain mark, you had to write in a certain way, you know? And you need, yeah, right, exactly. Now, that's where prostitution already begins. So, when you get like Ernst did, I'm an artist and a writer and I'm independent, self-employed, man, you're looking at a miracle. In 1985, that some guy could actually say to the world, you know, it's a miracle. It's a I ought to be like a national monument or like a national treasure. How many people can say today exactly what they think and what they believe? Look at that Indian who put the finger under the waist in the post office.
Oh yeah.
Right? Sharma Varma, just last year, before the Conservatives got into power. Instantly sacked for doing his, what I consider, civic duty. There was waste in the post office, he put the finger on it. Naturally, he went to the place where they could do something. Member of Parliament. Next thing, the guy is out. So already, poor guy, undoubtedly, his belief in the Canadian system is shattered. So the Conservatives do what is right. They rehire him because he did what is socially proper. When there is waste or corruption, you point it out. Otherwise, you become part of the corruption if you keep silent about it. You know? So now, what is that? Big national headlines, big news for the last 2 or 3 days, because he was one honest man, and he was being honored for being honest. You know, for once. You see, no. Unless we make examples, and this is what the problem is with the powerful media. Unless in our society we can begin to once again make novels, write books, have newspaper articles, television stories about oddballs, eccentrics that fly against the all-pervasive common mood and so on. You know, our society is going to be so gray and colorless and non-exciting that we're going to end up like drab societies in Cuba or in the East Bloc. That's the difference between free men, and that's why I'm very glad that you're here. That's why I took the time to talk to you, because freedom is a precious thing. Freedom of speech is one of the most precious things. You're talking to a guy who knows, because I no longer have it. You know, and every generation, regardless of their race, color, or creed, as long as they live somewhere on their hind legs on the planet Earth, ought to treat that like a bloody jewel. Because from freedom to say, to write, to speak, to broadcast, springs everything. If you don't have that, there is no social change. There is no correction of error. There is no possibility of getting after corrupt politicians or military, you know. Freedom is the fountain from which everything springs.
Okay. We had a man come in who was a Jewish survivor of Auschwitz in our class, and he told us all about it, how close he was to death and all that. And he also said, commenting on, like, this was before your trial came up, but he was already then pressuring, he said, whenever something like this comes up, whenever something more or less sprouts that could create a dictatorship or something like, for instance, what happened here, maybe he, like, they already knew about that at the time. So he said, we got to stomp it out. We got to get rid of it and make sure that nothing like that happens. But I feel that, don't you think that by stomping it out, that we're getting closer to a dictatorship by then just letting it go? Like, look at the United States, they have all kinds of newspapers and magazines and stuff that say this stuff, and they're certainly the largest and strongest democracy in the world.
You know, any man that has gone through what he claims to have gone through, and then talks about stomping out dissent, I would question his credentials right from the beginning.
He was in a newspaper too. Did you see this?
Oh yeah, sure. No, they're all in the newspapers. But I would still, as a private individual, just an ordinary student in his class, I would question his credential.
But see, first of all, we have another Jewish girl in our class, and then by doing something like that, they pretty well have a burden to everybody's mind. Anybody questioning that or in any way being negative about it is a Nazi. And then being German on top of it, you certainly don't look good. So how can you question it without losing in the end anyway?
Nature is very just. Sometimes some people say nature is Nazi because it confronts you as individuals with finding the inner strength, and it kind of is like a litmus test for you, whether you have what it takes. Since you don't believe that maroon smoke denotes a certain kind of an ethnic group going up to the chimney, and lemon color doesn't denote poles, since there is no smoke in the first place, that means now nature is confronting you with yourself, and that's part of the process of education, of growing up, of being men. You can either walk on your knees, like most of the Germans do around the world, on this issue, or you can do like Ernst, on your hind legs. And I'll tell you one thing, for 27 years I had one hell of a good time. I have informed millions of people. I've had the most fantastic debates. My mind has been exercised over and over again by friends in poor life. Don't think it's all bad. It's one hell of a good life, if you can take the heat.
So I'm just saying, by getting into that, like, automatically I would look at, maybe, I'm just assuming that certain teachers wouldn't like it. It would be against their own opinions, and how it goes with your marks then. And also, with my job, I'd probably lose it. I'm just assuming all this. And also my dad, he has a restaurant, all that. And, when I'm there, when it would be smashed, boycott, this goes down and everything.
That would only, this is true.
So, see, I'm not just harming myself, I'm harming others.
I have a channel.
Yeah.
I have a business. Advertising business.
Well, you lost a lot. You lost things for one.
Sure. Lots of other people.
Wasn't that on the first day of the trial? The first day
First day I walked up the courthouse step, and that was that. Never got no job from my clients. No. There are many others. But the thing is, this is what quality of life and what it means to be human. Not everybody is cut out to be Ernst Zündel. I'm not asking anybody to be a hero. All I'm saying to you is, I am alive. I have obviously made an impact, otherwise you wouldn't be here. There are certainly people that take my viewpoint seriously, otherwise I wouldn't have been put through the mill the way I was. Now, maybe that's not your route to travel, but that doesn't mean that you have a lifetime of slavery and subservience and lives cut out for you. You can still be a true man. Stand on your hind legs and witness for your heritage. Not only for the German heritage, it's not only a German thing. This is a human thing, because the moment that you allow the first intimidation, terror wins. The moment the first terrorist wins over anybody, you no longer have a just society. From there on, it's downhill all the way. Okay, let me point out something else that is a spin-off of being a kind of a struggler for this truth. That you meet the worst of people who will hate you with a passion, and you will meet the best of people who will put their lives down for you. And you will feel feelings like very few other people will ever during their lifetime be privileged to feel. For instance, when we walked into that courtroom, December the 28th, and then again on January the 16th, and Jürgen and Eric and some of my other friends were with me, and it came to a punch-up, and Jürgen was doing a song and dance and a wrestling match with some big burly chicken butcher from Kensington outside the courthouse door, Man, I'm telling you, and the other guys were pound town. The last time when we went on January the 7th, and Meyer Halevi found himself flat in his ass outside the court, and the three others. Yeah, we know 1985, that's not exactly the kind of stuff that life is made of. This is unusual. Some of those things are the payoffs, because you learn comradeship in the trial itself, the dedication of so many people helping, man, cleaning toilet bowls out of stuck, with so many people in the house. Women cooking most delicious meals under a small kitchen, People from the far-flung places. One guy from Florida sent us 3 sleeping bags. That was his contribution, older man. Another man of 82 gave us from his pension money a check for $1,000 because that paid for 10 hours attorney's fees. Now, there is idealism and dedication there, which in 1985, when everybody only talks about money, good times, and all this, you'll never meet. It's almost a religious experience. So, comradeship around here is spelled with a big C. And now, for instance, that the trial is over, Many of them do light duty, watch the monitors, patrol the area, look around. This is something that in the heart of Toronto, we are living a life which is totally different and is unique. That's one of the benefits.
When you went into a courtroom for the first time, did you really feel you were going to win, or was it pretty well set then?
I knew from the beginning that it was going to be an uphill fight, but I had laid out a strategy that I knew that informationally I would win, because I had invited, long before the court case started, the press from Tokyo, Singapore, Hong Kong, Peking, Moscow, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Cairo, in personal letters to them in December, the month of December, before we went to trial in January. I spent over $3,000 in stamps to invite media of the world, historians, politicians, every member of the West German Parliament, every member of the Austrian Parliament. I personally wrote to and asked for documents, or if they wanted to come, or if they knew witnesses to come to Toronto and bring them. Every important person in the West German government, state prosecutors, every radio and TV producer and so on of news in Western Europe knew about our case. So that's why many of them came.
What about the U.S. official who was at the Nuremberg trials, who wrote that book, 120 Questions of the Holocaust and Answers?
Mm-hmm.
And he was not admitted or something like that to the court?
They didn't allow him as an expert.
Why not? Was he like he had a lot of information on that? I mean, he was doing good.
But still, judges, the law is 90% what the judge says it is. I found that out. I mean, Dr. Forreston, he is a world-renowned expert, has done a lifetime of study on some of the details of the Holocaust. He was not admitted on the most important details. But that's why we're going into an appeal. So our enemies so far on this point won only a partial victory, because the last word is not in.
How come the Zündel trial, like, wasn't the Keekstra thing in the West, didn't that actually start before you came to the publicity? So how come yours has already gone by so fast, and his is just starting right now?
Yeah, well, purposely.
Purposely,
Purposely, yeah. Because we have both the same attorney. And since I have friends, organization, fantastic library, documentation, contacts around the world, I knew that this young attorney who was Canadian born and didn't know much about the topic needed to have an education if he wanted to have any chance at all to do anything meaningful with Keekstra. So I purposely advanced my trial before Keekstra so that the attorney could learn in my case and now do a better job with Keekstra. That's the reason.
Do you need a better one in the appeal then, I guess?
Yeah, but in the appeal, unless we get the verdict overturned, there is very little new evidence we can introduce, you see? Because it's basically only on errors that were made during the trial.
See, they tried a 281 PFOS section against him in Ottawa.
Yeah.
And they lost in this review.
Once before, you see,
Yeah.
the post office tried.
Never heard of it.
Oh yeah,
They won that. That's
they
why
took
you
my-
never heard of it.
They took my postal rights away, you see?
I heard about that.
For a year, right? That was because of section 281.1 and 2. And within 5 days of postal hearings, we destroyed that particular charge absolutely and utterly. And so I got my mail rights back. That's why they didn't tackle me again under section 281.1. Because I am not a hateful type. In spite of what everybody says. I don't go around hating people. Just because I am proud of my own kind doesn't mean I hate. Where's your friend? The Chinese fellow? Or anybody else. The guy who printed the booklet that I was finally convicted on was a Chinese guy from Canton, you know?
The binder was a black fellow from the island.
Yes. Bookbinder. So I don't run around wearing Ku Klux Klan robes when you guys are not around. I hate this idea, you know? I think to be alive in 1985 is beautiful, and it's at the same time a privilege and an obligation. You know? And what I did basically, I didn't do for Ernst, that's for damn sure, because I could have gone up, sucked up to the Jews and said, look, go easy on me, I'll stop publishing, right? Could have spared everybody a lot of problem and everything else. So for Ernst, the individual, there were lots of options. I could have gone to Germany, you know, which they're going to send me to anyways now if I lose my appeal. So I have lots of options. But the point is, there is a time in every man's life when you have to stand and be counted. My own father's generation, they stood in Stalingrad, in Alexandria, and in Berlin in 1945. And where they put their gun down, guess who took over? British, Americans, Canadians. The only difference was, at one time, my father was within sight of the Kremlin walls. And because of the action of the government of those who later on took up the guard in Berlin, the Bolsheviks were in downtown Berlin. So, we Germans, in the eyes of the world, have nothing to be embarrassed about. We saw the problem of communism long before President Reagan dreamt of his Star Wars, believe me. You know? My father gave Star Wars to the commies outside Stalingrad. You know?
Well, not all Americans are like that. Like, for instance, Patton, if they would have gone by him, we'd be fighting the communists still now. Like,
After he destroyed the Germans.
yeah.
So it wasn't really hindsight on his part. Patton doesn't have,
Churchill.
you know, Churchill, we killed the wrong pig.
Yeah.
How dare such a pig call my nation pigs?
Yeah.
You know? That drunken Slav. No. You see?
Some warmongering.
Yeah, this kind of hindsight doesn't cut the ice with me. It's nice that they came to their senses. Tribal late after 10 million German people died, after Europe was in ashes. The city of Leipzig had over 160,000 original manuscripts of what the greatest writers, brains, and painters in Europe produced. It was destroyed by a Holocaust in one single night by Allied bombs. Now, should we be grateful that suddenly the Brits that did the bombing and the Americans got kind of a second opinion on the corpse of Europe, you know, and then now they thought we use cannon fodder Germans to march east again. Bullshit. If they want to do something about communism, I'm all in favor to let them do it by themselves. And that's the reason why I came to Canada. As a pacifist, in a military sense, I, Ernst Zündel, will not take up any gun. I'll subject myself to the most political of struggles, but I will not take up a gun against another man.
So you don't believe that the Americans should have all their rockets and all that in Britain? They had their...
If they had done some thinking in 1935, there would be no need for rockets anywhere. And all the trillions and quadrillions that they have wasted since 1945 on the defense establishment would not have been necessary. And 10 million Germans would be alive, and 20 million Russians could be alive today. And you know, amongst those 20 million Russians and 10 million Germans, never mind all the thousands of Poles that died and so on, how many great poets, how many great thinkers, how many political activists are buried somewhere in the steppes of Asia and Russia because of this goddamn war, you see? And that war was totally unnecessary, totally unwanted by the people in Europe.
Wow.
But the capitalists in Europe, in America, they had this idea that they wanted to have another harvest, make more billions and more trillions.
Oh, I believe the war was unnecessary, but Hitler started it.
That's it's just like this is if you look at the history books that the way they're
That's what I mean.
all
Like,
over here,
that's the way I...
you're right. But it's like a hockey game. You see, the Second World War started in Versailles in 1919.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's one way of looking at it. Yeah, that's true.
Had they followed what they had promised in 1918, Hitler would have never come out.
I didn't
Hitler
think
would
of it that way, yeah.
Hitler would have been an artist somewhere in the streets of Vienna, painted pretty pictures, and that would have been it. Really no need for it. So, what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah, that's right. So the immediate cause of the war would have been
It's not always the
Hitler
immediate.
invading Poland, but what it actually was...
Sure.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Not only that, but
It's like saying World War I was started by shooting at Sarajevo.
which grown-up person,
Whatever, say
which
that.
grown-up person today but believe that the assassination of one archduke leads to this huge
Right.
conflict? Give you some matter, there's no way you can write it and get answers to all the questions which I couldn't answer. You know? Because that's
We have a lot of answers. Oh, yeah.
really nice days. Some recent books.
I gave him one or two over the phone.
Huh?
I gave him one or two over the phone.
Oh, did
the other
you?
time.
But even so, like, a lot of this stuff that they send me was neo-Nazi propaganda material.
Well, that's
And it most definitely was. And
right.
I didn't want that stuff, but it's here, and I'm going to keep it. Like, it's something interesting to look at. But
What
Just
specifically
well-learned.
are you referring to?
well,
What is it?
send me. This here is all right. this year is also partially good, but when I look at stuff like this, like the ewige Jude and order yourself a swastika flag or a General SS flag or SS headquarters flag or an SS ring or breast badge. I mean, it's probably all fake and garbage anyway, all made
Exactly,
up.
made by Jews in the United States. This is the biggest industry going, and it's usually the
It's
biggest.
made by the neo-Nazis, or
No, absolutely not.
Why would they sell
why
this
would
stuff?
Jews make
What do they
stuff?
sell?
Why would the Jews want to do that? Bring that forth?
The
That is
biggest, the millions, fortunes are in fake regalia. Yeah. Lots of young people are just, I mean, you see especially punkers now, absolutely into that shit.
Yeah.
And it's all fake stuff. There's hardly a real one around, you know. And these young kids are cheated twice. Once, I personally always have been against this, and you see no evidence around here of that, because I think that a medal worn by any man that sacrificed for it,
Only that man.
you know, only that man deserves it. And I think it is not nice. It is. I consider that an insult to the man, whether he was Japanese, Russian, German, or whatever, to adorn myself in something which I did not earn. I mean, this is like having on your wall a diploma from some school or some course which you didn't take. Every decent guy would feel bad about it, you know. And I feel the same way about every medal.
You see all
So
these
if that's
books.
if that, you can scan all my stuff. I sold one belt buckle with my name on
Not
it,
one German author.
my set on it, you know.
They're all about Nazis.
And I consider that absolutely justified.
So this is not. I can't believe that it wasn't that it is made by Jews. It's hard to believe.
Look, if you want to, the largest militaria manufacturer and distributor in America is a Jew called Kramer. And he makes absolute millions of dollars on that stuff. And you can get Rommel goggles.
Yeah.
How many Rommel goggles are there bound to be 45 years after the war? You know? or German caps, you know, these officers' caps. How many times do you see these freaks walking down Yacht Street? I mean, it's like Madame Tussauds Wax Museum empty.
Okay.
No, this is, you see, and when I gave the Global Mail interview 2 years ago, I said, you have to go, eh? Most of these Germans couldn't walk straight anyway. They trip over their own bloody feet today. Can't do it.
Ken and I have to go. We have to catch an earlier bus.
Oh, have you?
So,
Very good. Mr. Switzer, merci beaucoup, huh?
Yeah.
nice talking to you.
You're not leaving? So who is leaving?
I have to
Just
get
yeah,
leaving.
Can you find a way back?
The Chinese contingent is leaving, eh?
Yes.
See,
Unfortunately, we'd like to stay, but.
Thanks for coming down, eh?
why
Okay.
we're going to